Nyca Ttyzws. Nyca Ttyzws, Hayes Dom, is from the planet Aaron 1. He is of Mandalorian bloodline, though has never seen his race's homeworld. Born to simple traders on the desolate rock known as the Scarred Planet, he spent his youngest days helping his father gather rare stones and ores from across the Scar's riverbeds and caves that are littered all over. Sometime shortly after the Great Jedi Cull, Order 66, a surviving Jedi fled to Aaron 1, aiming to salvage what he could from the lesser-known temple on the planet and find any other survivors. Upon arrival at the temple, he soon found he was not alone. Two beings he could sense. One, a young boy, seemed to emit a powerful force energy. Cautiously, he sought the two and warily observed them. Mere scavengers. The elder, though, in a seemingly familiar armour. Continuing to observe them, he noticed the boy searching through the debris from the ruined temple, when he found a Jedi holocron. The Jedi's heart rate increased. The boy had found one of the artifacts he had ventured here to seek. This meant he now had two options. One, engage the boy and his father, and reveal his identity to validate his claim to the artifact. However, this was risky. Even if they did not sympathize with the newly formed empire, there was surely a fair number of credits rewarded to those who could identify an escaped Jedi and their location. 2. He could shadow them until they returned to sell the artifact, and offer to purchase it at the first opportunity, hoping he had the required credits that they demanded for it. As he watched and pondered for a moment, the young boy who had been toying with the object he had found began to hold the holocron in outstretched hands. He closed his eyes and focused. It began to levitate just above his palms. As the shocked Jedi watched this young, untrained child attempt to unlock a holocron, his mind was made up. He leapt from his aerial perch from which he had been observing the events, and using the force, landed softly a few feet behind the boy, who was intensely focused on the object inches above his hands. The boy's father had ventured elsewhere, searching for anything worth salvaging. The Jedi spoke to the focused boy. "You are gifted, child. Where did you learn such things as this?" The question surprised the boy, who in shock turned and sent the holocron flying at the Jedi at immense speed. Surprised, the Jedi caught the object using the force just a foot away from his face. Who are you?" the shocked child exclaimed. "My name is Krylent Valar," the Jedi replied. "I am a Jedi Master from the planet Odin. I am here to seek artifacts such as this one," he said, slowly rotating the holocron in front of him. "Now, tell me, child, where did you learn the skill to wield your abilities?" Valar asked the boy. I used to watch the Jedi train from a comfy spot just above the temple with my father. We used to use our macro binoculars," the boy stuttered in reply. And I practiced at home when I was alone." "You are talented, child, but you lack the knowledge to unlock a holocron, for now. Come here, boy, and I will teach you that which you need to know." The boy approached cautiously, and Valar passed him back the holocron, which he now realized was a simple one, holding beginner knowledge for the training of younglings in such things. "Do as you were before," Valar told the child, who did as he was asked. Closing his eyes, he began to once again levitate the object above his outstretched hands. "Now, focus on the holocron. Clear your mind of all other things. Picture it in your hands as a puzzle. Feel its energy, and use it to unlock the puzzle before you," instructed Krylent. A few minutes passed, and with Master Valar's instruction, the boy began to unlock the holocron. Slowly but surely he was being successful. Just then the boy's father returned. Upon seeing the strange being before him, and also his son a few feet from it, with the holocron hovering above his hands, he panicked. After hearing the Jedi had supposedly turned on the Republic, resulting in the Great Jedi Cull, Order 66, and so he activated his jetpack and opened fire on the Jedi, who ignited his green saber and deflected the bolts, being careful to send them away from the boy and his father. "Nyca, find cover now!" cried the Mandalorian to the boy. Nyca did as his father instructed, while screaming, "Stop, father! He's a good Jedi!" Though this attempt to end the conflict was in vain, the Mandalorian switched from his AC-80C rifle to a concealed wrist blaster mounted to his armor's gauntlet that fired ion bolts. Using this weapon, he managed to temporarily disable the Jedi saber by landing a shot on the edge of the blade emitter. He used this opening to dive toward the Jedi whilst reaching for his rifle. Valar immediately adjusted his stance and swiftly let off a powerful force push attack, which sent his attacker hurtling backwards, while simultaneously deactivating the jetpack. With a crash, the boy's father smashed through the door from which he had entered, and hit the floor, knocking him unconscious, and shattering the shoulder on which he landed. Silence. "Father, no!" screamed Nyca as he rushed towards his father. "I am sorry, child, but I could not let it carry on any longer. Your father will be fine." Valar consoled the boy as he followed closely. They went through the door through which the Mandalorian had crashed, to see his unconscious body sprawled on the floor like a rag doll. The armor which protected his shoulder was slightly misshapen and at an awkward angle. "Do not fret, boy, he is alive, though it seems I have damaged his shoulder. Come with me to my ship, and we can put him in the medical bay," said Valar to Nyca. "Oh, okay. Are you sure he's all right?" "Search your feelings, child. Sense his energy, and you will know it to be true." The trio ventured out of the temple. Valar carried Nyca's father using the Force to save any more damage to his shoulder. The Jedi had left his ship, the Kaysoa, hidden in the dense vegetation near the temple, which was situated in Aaron's Great Scar, built over one of the rivers in the bottom. The Great Scar was Aaron's narrowest of gorges, being only 18 miles across, and the least inhabited of the lot. Upon boarding the ship, Valar showed the boy to the rec room and told him to wait, handing him the holocron and telling him to try again. The Jedi took the Mandalorian to the medical bay and instructed his med unit to find any problems and right them. He then returned to the boy, who was once again focused on the holocron before him, though this time he was closer to unlocking its secrets. Valar left him to it and returned to his quarters to meditate. Alone in the rec room, Nyca focused on the artifact in front of him. Feeling its energy, he slowly unlocked its puzzle. Through the Force, he could see before him the complex structure of the puzzle's inner workings and deconstructed it piece by piece, step by step, until finally it opened. Upon opening, a hologram began to project itself, displaying at first the same kind of weapon Nyca knew only the Jedi to wield, a lightsaber. The projection began to change, and the saber was slowly taken apart in stages until a blown-up, deconstructed lightsaber was presented before him. The image remained. The boy examined the workings of the weapon, wondering what each part did, and in particular, what the funny-looking stone was at the centre of its many parts. It looked unfamiliar, and as nothing did that one could find on Aaron 1, or at least, he thought. However, the longer he looked at the mysterious rock, the more familiar it became. He studied its edges and its shape closer until it dawned upon him. His parents each had one that hung as a pendant, their marital gift to each other. As this dawned on him, Valar entered the room. "Congratulations, child. Your first challenge has been completed, and your knowledge of the Force therefore increased." "Mr. Valar," Nyca trailed in an inquisitive tone. "You may call me Krylant, Nyca. And what is it that is troubling you?" Valar asked. "Krylant, what is this stone?" Nyca quizzed. "That is a kyber crystal, child, the source of power in a Jedi's weapon. They are rare and sought-after objects." My parents each have one around their necks as marriage gifts. How do they work?" the boy asked. "That is a lesson for another time. For now, ponder your recent achievement and reassess how you accomplished this task." At this moment, the Kaysoa's alarm sounded, "Come, boy, quickly," Valar said, as he turned and headed toward the cockpit. Nyca followed as he was told, all the while wondering what the problem was. The duo entered the cockpit and silenced the alarm. A small craft was approaching, on course to land suspiciously close to the Ksoa. "Stay on the ship, boy. This will not be a pleasant visit. That is an old Republic vessel. The new Empire repurposed them to suit its own needs, and they are on the hunt for Jedi. Suppress your abilities for now, and they will not harm you," Master Valar told the boy. He replied with a solemn nod that signaled the Jedi's exit. Krylon slowly walked down the Ksoa's boarding ramp, and was met with 2 hooded men that wore robes similar to his own, only they were all black. Behind them were 6 clone troopers of the 501st Legion, the most notorious warriors in the Clone Wars, the best of the best. They knew how a Jedi approached combat after years of fighting alongside their generals, the Jedi Knights and Masters, who led the many clones into battles, aiding their already exceptional combat abilities with the Jedi's wisdom and strategy, combined with the power of the Force, giving them a steep advantage compared to normal opponents. However, it would normally take the troops' strength in numbers as much as their ability to overwhelm a Jedi, which left Krylon with one possible worry. Who were the 2 hooded figures? Were they the Sith Lords that had supposedly aided in the destruction of the Jedi Order, and also the Republic? And on top of that, engineered the entire Clone Wars?
"Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Eingard Tech. Are you looking to purchase some goods? I have excellent prices at the moment, mainly due to insufficient funds to repair my poor ship's hyperdrive, but alas, how may I be of service?"
Krylon spoke to the men, bowing to them and putting on an almost comical smile. The smaller of the 2 mysterious figures stepped forwards, and Krylon prepared himself for the worst, but remained composed. A deep and raspy voice sounded from under the cloak.
"We have been accused of trespassing in the temple nearby, the Jedi Temple. Nobody is to go to these places, or they face the treatment of any Jedi that may be found there."
"Oh, sir, no, my, no, sir."
"You must not me off, sir. I give you my word as a man of O'Doon. I know well these rules, and have a deep dislike of those sword-waving Banfapoodoo wizards. They killed my brethren years ago. I should be glad to see them gone," Valar replied, using all his wit to appear a sour trader with no credits to fix his ship, all the while using his great talent for Jedi mind tricks to influence the clones, and at least the thought of the strange robed being. This was a risky move for the Jedi, however, as if the 2 robed figures were as he suspected they were, that being either the 2 trained Sith Lords that many Jedi had believed to be extinct, or at the very least 2 rogue Jedi that had aligned with the Empire, somehow avoiding Order 66. After a moment, the smaller suspect spoke again. They had bought Valar's cover, and were turning to leave when Nyca's father charged down the Ksoa's ramp, having locked his damaged armor in position to hold a rifle, while still having full mobility on his good side. As he got out from under the ship, he ignited his jetpack, catching the attention of the Imperials, and Valar, whose heart sank as the Mandalorian cried, "Die, Jedi scum!" and fired off a wrist rocket and a grenade barrage that came from a mounted launcher on his left shoulder. These narrowly missed Krylon, who had to use the Force to aid in his dash to safety under the underside of the ship. The Mandalorian hadn't noticed the Imperial enforcers that now charged for him. The first 3 clones began to fire on the airborne threat, whilst the remaining 3 laid down fire on Krylon, who the hooded figures had decided with all certainty was a Jedi after all. The taller of the pair went with the first 3 clones to swiftly end the loose ends battle, whilst the smaller headed for Krylon. As he did so, his hood fell down, revealing a pale and scarred face, with yellowed eyes and a cybernetic bottom jaw that was merely skeletal features, leaving a permanent, malicious grin on his face. As he got closer, He ignited a double-bladed saber that he then separated into two individual sabers and unclipped his flowing black and crimson cape, using the force, at the same time leaving its trail on the floor behind him as he walked onward, leaving it where it lay. Krylon came out from behind his cover and removed his own cloak, as his opponent ordered his troops to aid in the elimination of the Mandalorian.
I shall deal with this one personally. We that serve the Emperor do not condone lies, especially those of a Jedi.
The man spoke, and the troops ceased fire and regrouped to deal with the troublesome Mandalorian, who, despite his broken shoulder and locked armor, was holding his own, in true Mandalorian fashion, bombarding his enemies with smoke bombs, grenade barrages, and iron bolts from his wrist blaster that disrupted not only the troops' weapons if a shot landed, but could also knock out the HUD in their helmets, combined with his other gauntlet wrist rockets. This all in all was a deadly arsenal, known as a Mandalorian trait.
Though his vital heavy weapons were by now running low on ammunition, and the fuel cells in his jetpack would not last forever, he realized he would need to partner with the Jedi to survive. 4 of the clones were dead or maimed from explosions, leaving 2 to kill, and the second cloaked figure, who so far had stayed out of range and seemingly done nothing to aid the clones, which began to unnerve Nyca's father. Was he waiting for my artillery to run out before he makes a move? Or my fuel cells? At least if I can deal with these clones swiftly and conservatively, I can stand half a chance, and maybe hold out for the Jedi to help, if he will still help after this shitstorm I've dropped us in here. I'll pray to the Force they don't find Nyca, he thought as he got a 5th trooper. All the while, Valar and the man who had now declared himself as an Imperial Inquisitor for the Galactic Empire, he began to explain his duty: to find any Jedi relics and store them for the Emperor, as to cease the Jedi existing, and to in time have them dissolved to mere legends and myths, to entertain children, or likewise discipline them.
Now, Jedi, enough talk. A dead man needs not know any more than he already does. Now, Jedi, your time has come, the Inquisitor coaxed as he began a furious dual-saber assault on Valar, who was more than ready, immediately igniting a double-bladed yellow saber and a single-bladed green saber that he had used earlier, and blocked every strike the Inquisitor made using his vast knowledge of lightsaber combat, but also his native traditional style, which he combined with the usual saber forms of which he had mastered many. His opponent, though, was holding his own, using the ability to double up or use 2 single sabers and switching frequently between the 2 styles. The Jedi clearly outmatched his opponent with his force abilities, though, and was able to use a powerful push attack to send him flying to his counterpart, who was still keeping a back seat, whilst the final clone and Nyca's father were now fighting both on the ground. The taller of the Inquisitors now removed his hood, revealing him to be a severely augmented Corellian man. His face was more robotic than flesh, and the alterations seemed to carry on down his neck. He helped his comrade to his feet and removed his own cloak, which had been covering the giant cybernetic arms which linked the half-mechanical, half-Corellian body of the beast of a man. Finished with a mechanical lower right leg, he presented an aura of raw power, and his glowing purple eye, with his half-skeletal metal face, instilled fear of the cyborg-esque aesthetic. Valar used the Force to leap between the pair and the young boy's father, and proceeded to confront the man once again. "You will not win this battle, Imperials," he growled at the men, his Odin spirit emerging, his natural love of combat aiding his abilities, though refraining to let his anger be his attack's driving force.
"You are foolish, Jedi. My partner here," the heavily augmented man said as he gestured to the shorter, heavily scarred man next to him,
"is brash and quick to underestimate his opponent. I am quite the opposite, as you shall now find out,"
he finished as he drew his lightsaber. The second man once again ignited his blades, and the pair advanced on Valar. At the same time, Nyca's father finished the final clone with a savage melee blow from an electrified gauntlet blade that was as sharp as a rancor's claw and as jagged as a rock. As the clone dropped to the floor, he saw the intimidating Imperial enforcers advancing on Valar, so immediately ignited his jetpack and fired a barrage of grenades, thermal detonators, and smoke grenades, skillfully placing each one strategically between Valar and the enforcers to provide the Jedi with time to adjust to each attack and perform key counterattacks against the battle-hardened opponents. From above, the Mandalorian gave Valar a warning to fall back. The Jedi, though confused by the call due to the success of the current strategy, obliged, leaping from the opening in which they fought to a canopy the same height as Nyca's father and just a few feet from where he now hovered. Before their attackers could react, Nyca's father had thrown a thermal imploder and launched his final grenade barrage from his shoulder mount, followed by his final wrist rocket, using the barrage and the rocket to trap them between the imploder for maximum impact. His timing was impeccable, and the Imperials didn't even seem to notice the imploder, due to the distraction of the included components, until they had no time to escape its blast, which was immense, shaking the ground around them. The battle seemed to be over, as Valar and the man, who now introduced himself as Sykes, Nyca's father. The two exchanged gratitude for each other's assistance in the intense fight that had taken place as Nyca ran down the Queso's boarding ramp, fearing the worst after hearing such a blast. As he saw his father and Valar, he stopped, and a look of relief spread over his face.
"Nyca, back on the ship now," Sykes instructed his son. "We are coming now, but this is not a scene for young eyes."
As he began to walk toward the ship, whilst Valar retrieved his cloak, he heard a lightsaber ignite as he turned and reached for his pistol. The larger of their opponents grabbed him with the force, and though he could barely kneel, pulled Sykes with intense speed and ferocity onto his blade, which he held ready to impale the man that had nearly killed him. Valar had turned, but only to see Sykes already with a lightsaber through his chest, and Nyca turned instinct to see his father's fate. "Father, no!" the boy screamed in horrified anguish, immediately becoming enraged. Valar once again used force push and engaged the rugged cyborg threat as Nyca ran to his father's side. He held his dying father as Valar rushed to meet his opponent, who had landed a few meters from where he had been impaled. The young boy was being torn apart inside as his dying father moved a hand to his face and said,
"Nyca, my boy, know that I love you dearly, and so does your mother."
He stopped as he coughed and spluttered.
"You must learn to protect your mother,"
he continued, once again coughing violently.
"Nyca, take my armor and my weapons, for there is no finer protection from what may come than Mandalorian battle armor."
He coughed again, painfully, though a smile emerged on the proud man's face.
"You will do me proud, son. Remember, I love you."
And Sykes gasped for air, though his failing lungs did not grant him much.
"The galaxy is yours, Ace,"
he finished as his final breath left his being, and the hand that had cradled the son's face that held him as he became one with the Force fell to the one soft patch of air and grass on which the body lay, though now it was dry and scorched from the blast of the warrior's last stand as he lived. Nyca could find no words to say to his father, as he had been speaking before he died, and now trembled, at first in despair and regret due to his father's death, though this quickly morphed into anger and resentment towards the man that had murdered his father. This sudden swell of anger in Nyca amplified his powers tenfold, and though he was untrained, was able to summon the pale and scarred man's lightsabers, which surprisingly were still functional and lay a few feet from his dismembered corpse. Nyca ran at full pelt towards Valar and the augmented Corellian, who was miraculously still putting up a good fight, despite severe burns to the parts of the body that were still flesh and the dysfunction of his augments. The cyborg was strong with the Force, though it took all of his being to manipulate his cybernetic limbs with the Force, as well as dealing with Krylant's onslaught of saber flurries, and so barely noticed an enraged Nyca barreling towards him. As the boy drew close to the two combatants, he ignited the two blades, holding one to the front and one facing behind him. The two already engaged men heard the blades draw as the child let out an almighty scream, and launched himself in a spinning motion at his father's killer, who reacted in time to block the blow of the first saber, though underestimating the ferocity of the boy's attack, resulted in his weapon being knocked to the side, leaving the following saber clean to slice through the Imperial at an angle of roughly 45 degrees, severing the top bust of the man from the remainder of the torso. As this happened, Valar screamed with all his might for the child to stop, but to no avail. Before Nyca could land from his savage assault, the Jedi had reached out with the Force and grabbed him, pulling him rapidly in his own direction. No sooner had Nyca's second blade struck its victim, the boy felt nothing but regret and shame. So as he moved quickly and helplessly toward the Jedi that had nearly saved his father, he expected to be killed on the spot. In fact, he almost hoped for the fate. At least he would be reunited with his father. His mind was flooded with thoughts. What about his mother? What would she think? If neither Sykes or Nyca returned, how would she know? How would she know what happened? Would Valar finish her too? If not, how would she survive without him or his father? Suddenly he was on the floor at the feet of the towering Odin Jedi, who now peered down at the boy, who had stopped trembling, and now simply knelt calmly before the being who would decide his fate. Krylant stared a moment before sheathing his sabers and lifting the boy and embracing him. "Do not fret, my child. Though under ordinary circumstances Jedi do not condone such an act, today shall go unnoticed. Do not let the pain you feel become your master. Learn to understand and overcome it. This is not an easy task, though it will be a vital lesson if you wish to come with me and train in the Jedi ways. The decision is yours." Valar spoke to the boy. Nyca's mind raced. Why was he being spared after committing such an awful atrocity? Should he train with Valar? He pondered a moment as he cleared his mind and thought sincerely about the offer. His thoughts lingered on his mother and the words of his father moments before he returned to the Force. Looking to Krylant, the child's face a picture of indecision, Nyca asked, "But what about my mother? If I did come with you, how would I know if she was safe? How could I protect her if I'm not there?" The words left his mouth as quick as a champion pod racer leaves a starting grid. "Calm yourself, Nyca. Tomorrow we shall go to your mother and bring her with us to safety. This planet is no longer safe for either of you. We don't have long before another squad is sent to learn why the first unit is failing to respond, and I cannot fight the entire 501st at once," Krylant said to the child in a serious and stern but somehow calming tone. For a moment, Nyca did nothing but stare at the Jedi Master before him, wearing a blank expression on his face. The being on which Nyca's gaze lay had already had enough of waiting for at least some kind of response when he reached down and simply picked up the child with his two right arms and carried him to the ship. Valar left Nyca in the room which he used as his meditation chambers, with nothing but something to drink and the holocron he had earlier unlocked, whilst he himself returned to the recent battlefront. As he stood at the foot of the Queso's ramp and looked upon the solemn scene, his head span and was flooded with many memories of the vicious Clone Wars in which he had aided the Republic's mighty army in many near-suicidal missions. The men with which he undertook many of these dangerous missions soon became as thick as thieves with their new friend, and together faced off against near impossible odds again and again, with rarely anything other than torn robes or a scuffed armor paint job. The man gathered his thoughts and suppressed the painful memories, once again returning to the gruesome scene that lay in his path. He moved quickly now and made a beeline to Sykes' remains, delicately and respectfully lifting the lifeless man and quickly returning to his beloved vessel. Once aboard, he took Sykes to the medical bay once again, though this time he gave no orders to the droid who stood patiently and waited them. The Jedi stood and thought for a moment. Under his breath he uttered a few words in his native tongue before turning and leaving the room.